Welcome back to the Marvel Movie Minute, a daily podcast in which we explore the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe 1 minute at a time. In this, our 5th season, we are looking at Joe Johnston's 2011 film Captain America, The First Avenger. I'm Andy Nelson from the Next Reel Film Podcast. Still sans Pete, but he will be back. He will be back once he makes it through that fireball. Today, we are talking about minute 69, which begins with Bucky walking carefully across the gantry and ends with Colonel Phillips dictating a letter to Senator Brandt about the disappearance of Stephen G. Rogers. Back on the show, it is Andrew and Joe Darowski. Hello, both of you.
Hello.
Thank you for letting us back. You know, still going through these minutes here.
Still up on the 5th or 15th level of the factory floor.
Yeah, I know. This has been a lot of time with some explosions and some heights. That's been like the theme of our group of minutes here.
It really has. We have Bucky walking across this gantry, as one does very carefully, with the fires down below. And I swear, it feels like we are in an airplane over a bombing raid. Like, it feels like we are so high up. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, we talked about this with the mask floating down. I feel like we've gone up another 5 or 6 stories from the mask. And even then, we were starting to question, like, how high up are they?
Maybe what we don't realize about this factory is, like, these levels are actually all raising up, and they are actually moving away from the fire.
There's an elevator system. It's like...
Yeah, I don't know. The whole thing, it's a little funny to me, and... but, you know, it's fine. It does what it needs to do. It gives us a sense of danger for these two as they're trying to escape in, you know, a ridiculous way. Let's make it across this gantry over to that door. It gives us a chance to have a moment between Steve and Bucky. It gives us a chance to kind of let Bucky see more as to what Steve is capable of, I suppose, even if we don't get to fully. But I don't know, it's done in a way that feels like the climax to the action, this midpoint action beat that we're at here.
Yeah, and I don't have any sense of danger, right? I think that's one of the things that rings maybe most unsuccessful about how they cut out of this action sequence of Captain America leaping and the fire engulfing him, and and then we're going to cut to the letter, and in this minute we don't know what the letter's going to say, or what the report is going to be. But I don't think any audience member has real concern for Steve Rogers, in this moment, and I think if like you said, we do get the bonding between Steve and Bucky a little bit, and we see Bucky like learning more about Steve. Like, that all works, but any sense of danger for me feels so minimal. I mean, I won't say for Bucky, because obviously there's going to be some danger for Bucky that's going to come at some point. But for Captain America, at least for this whole action beat to end on like what's supposed to be, I think, ambiguity for the audience, there isn't any.
You're right. There's no sense of ambiguity. It's like, okay, they're cutting away because they need to like cut the scene and move on. And I don't think that there's necessarily a better way to do it than to do it right here, with the flame transition and everything. Because like, what else are you going to do? It's like, and he lands, and like, we still need to cut away and get back to the camp. And so I guess we do it in the middle of an intense moment, even if it's not suspenseful.
It's a strange way to play it, though. Like, this whole idea of playing it where we have an explosion that potentially puts the hero of our film, the film that is named after our hero, that he might actually be dying at this point. It's such a strange thing to do. I suppose, like, the way that it was scripted, we'll talk more about Colonel Phillips' letter tomorrow, but he does say something that was scripted in the bit that we hear in today's minute is, he says, I regret to report that Captain Stephen G. Rogers went missing behind enemy lines on the 3rd of last week. He actually says of last week, giving us a sense that it has been over a week that he's been gone.
Wait, hold on. The phrase is the 3rd of last week. I don't think that's not a unit of time.
That doesn't work.
the third of last week.
Well, yeah,
of last month, this month.
It was, yeah. It's funny. It is the 3rd. Technically, it was the 3rd of November.
Right, but the 3rd. Okay,
yeah. The 3rd, which happened last week. And it is a weird phrasing.
And maybe
it's
I just cut it. Like, at some point, someone caught that. I'm like, wait, this isn't making it.
Last week on the 3rd.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it doesn't make a ton of sense in the phrasing. But what we lose from them cutting that is a sense that it's been a week that Steve and these troops have been gone. There's been no sign. And so at least there would have been a sense that it's been a while. Like that would have helped a little bit. As it stands, it feels like, we just, she took off with him yesterday and we haven't heard and we think that he's probably dead. It just ends up playing with a little less punch the way it is.
And I think it would have worked just fine for them to be writing this letter and thinking Steve has died and no one made it out of this battle. And then they get the relief of seeing them come out of the woods. Like that would land just fine. But to try and give the audience any sense of that ambiguity, like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to feel any of the same relief because I never believed Captain America had died in the explosion.
Mm-hmm.
It ends up feeling, we were talking about kind of ambiguity yesterday with different elements of this fight and with Schmidt and with Zola and all of that and all these different escapes. And it just kind of felt like they weren't really sure how, like they knew they wanted this big confrontation with everybody. But once it happened, they didn't know how to get out of it. And so it feels like that's what I see when I get to this fireball moment is like, well, let's just kind of dissolve out and, we'll just come back and we're on a typewriter and we don't need to show the end of it. And it ends up feeling very, I don't know, like they couldn't quite figure it out. That's how I read into it. And it ends up feeling a lot more lackluster than I feel like it should.
Yeah. And even if like we had seen, in only, 20 or 30 seconds, because we see how much action they pack into 60 seconds of time. It is quite a lot that can be done. You see Captain America land and you see them get out and make eye contact with the other escapees. And then we cut to the typewriter. Like, I think the impact of those characters being left with the unknown of what's happened, that would still function perfectly well. It's just treating the audience this way. We all know this movie's called Captain America. He didn't die in the explosion.
Yeah, like it would have been different if like Captain America went across first and then Bucky was trying to go across and then he does a last minute jump and there's a fireball.
And
then
we don't know
like,
if Bucky makes it.
Is this where they lose Bucky? Like it would have been a little bit more of a cliffhanger. But with it being Captain America, it's like, okay, so then the big reveal here is that in just like, basically 3 steps, he can jump. He can propel his body over this entire chasm is basically what we get. And it's not even a surprise because we essentially see pretty much the whole thing. Like we see a great shot of him jumping. We see the wire rig kind of shot of him flying across like through the fireball. It's like he's going pretty far and pretty fast. And I don't think that he's going to have any issue.
And it's not like this is a test run for Captain America because we've seen him be Captain America, right? We've seen him run and jump and swim and I don't think anyone really doubts. It's like, oh, can he make this jump? It's like, well, yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like was said, it is a revelatory for Bucky. And so maybe if we had focused a little bit more on him seeing this and be like, Steve, what? This is not the guy that I had to protect in the alley anymore. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've had a few of those moments already, but I think that emotional beat would have landed better for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if he actually had an opportunity to greet him on the other side. Like there could have been an actual moment between the two, finally seeing kind of some of the stuff that Steve's capable of actually doing, not just talking about it, not just being bigger or punching somebody, but really like having a thing that he just did something that no human should be able to do.
Now, circling back to a point I believe you made last episode, it's not super clear what the plan is once they get to this door up on the 7th floor of a burning building.
So maybe that's another factor.
And so maybe that's why they have to cut away. It's because they're planning this all, and then they get out on the roof. Oh man, okay, this is a really tall building.
Now it's a King Kong cut.
Yes, yeah. We're just gonna move along, and
exactly.
You know what? Let's just move along even before he lands. We don't even want to show them trying to get out this door because then the audience is going to still be thinking a little more than we want them to about the fact that this is the door out onto the roof.
Mm-hmm. Like this is maybe out of all the minutes we've talked about, this is the one where like I maybe have the most nits to pick, and we've already gone into that. The continuity error of the broken railing is bugging me because Bucky gets across and there's the railings all fine on Steve's side. The gantry breaks off for some reason, which it shouldn't do because that had a crane winch on it that should be able to sustain quite a bit of force.
Yeah. Right.
But for some reason, it's collapsing now. I would suspect that it could handle more shearing pressure than the rumbling of the explosions is causing. So I don't feel like that's very realistic. And then we cut back to Steve, and suddenly the railing is broken in front of him, so he can bend it for his jump to clear out space for his jump.
I never noticed that it is completely fully intact until we cut over and it's now broken.
Like I tried to look really carefully to see, it's like, does it break when the gantry falls, and there's nothing that would suggest that it should have. Like, I looked really close.
At least it's not happening on screen for us.
It looks like you see the gantry fall,
Mm-hmm.
and I just don't see anything about it that would cause it to shear the railing.
And even after it falls, we do get the over the shoulder shot of Steve, and the railing is still complete right there.
Yeah, it looks full right there.
In the shot of the gantry falling, if you look carefully, like right over the top of the shield, this is about like 16 seconds into this minute, you can see that it is actually two pieces of railing that are close to each other. Like the ends are close to each other, but they're not quite touching, but they're both completely straight. So it's almost like there was a design of it where they wanted it to look like it had broken, I guess. Again, it doesn't make a lot of sense, because you're right. When we cut back to that over the shoulder shot, everything is intact. Like the railing's completely fine. And then also it's like, why doesn't it do anything like this to the railing on the other side where Bucky is? Like that side's completely fine. Bucky's leaning over that one. So none of it makes any sense as to what's going on with that.
And then, when you do see it bent at about 30 seconds, there's one piece that's bent outwards over the chasm and one piece that is bent straight down. And so I'm wondering, like, did they cut something falling? Like, to me, the one that's straight down looks like something could have fallen and smashed into it. And so maybe they had like an extra beat in there of something falling from the ceiling.
Debris falling down.
Yeah. And it just got cut for time.
Mm-hmm.
That likely would have been the only thing that would have made any sense. It's a strange moment that they have.
I do like the moment of him bending the pipe, and, it's like, okay, like he is strong. He can, because usually it's been not like steady strength, it's been explosive strength from Captain America.
Right.
It's like, okay, he can punch really hard. It's like, well, he can lift something. He can move heavier things.
But here we're actually seeing him,
and so it's like a little bit, exert that kind of strength.
Taking several seconds. Yeah. Right. And that's, I don't want to go too much into like Superman comparisons again, but it's like that sort of strength that he has, that like, bending this bar and things. But it is a sustained moment that we have of him doing something, which then leads into the jump, which is, there is a level of, I suppose, strength that for puny Steve, like a lot of this, I think, is stuff that he didn't know. Like he's never really fully been, at least in the film, never been able to test, like, what can he do, what can't he do. And so I do like, at least it feels like there is a moment on his face that it's just like, well, let's see if I can do this too. Mm-hmm. When he runs, kind of steps backward before he takes the jump. Like, I don't know. I like that at least it seems like, he's still trying to figure out, how much he can accomplish.
Yeah.
But it is kind of an odd little moment that we have here. This whole jump, this whole moment with him and Bucky, and the fact that this is the moment where suddenly it looks like, in the process of making it to the other side, there must have been a hairdresser who was able to kind of clean up Bucky's, give him a quick shave and kind of make his hair look not quite so messy.
Also got him some food and some vitamins. Some antibiotics maybe to fight off.
Is the cut on his cheek gone?
It's still there. It's kind of like it's in the shadows, though. It's really hard to pin. But
a lot harder to tell.
It doesn't look. It looks like he's had some treatment with it. Like maybe the fire kind of scabbed it over real quick or something. I don't know. This moment there. I wish that this whole thing had a better resolution. Like I've never really liked this moment in the film. And that it builds to this pseudo surprise of did Steve make it? Like, I'm not exactly sure what the intentions are, but
also
that's where we land.
It just, like, even with the jump, it's like, this isn't like the final leap to safety even. It's like you're leaping to another side of a burning building.
Yeah. Right.
And so, like, if it's like you're leaping, across a cliff and, the good guys are on one side, the bad guys on the other, like, then you can have, I think, this kind of moment. But like, this feels almost a little out of the frying pan into the fire situation is our big finale of this rather like long action sequence that has a lot of good moments that we've talked about, but also a few head scratching moments.
I'll throw like another head scratch is like his 3 steps into the jump. When he's backing up, he takes 6 steps.
They're really big steps forward, apparently.
yeah, really striding.
That's I was thinking about that too.
But it feels like he jumps too soon. It feels like he jumps early.
Yeah, it feels like there is so much more room behind him that he doesn't take advantage of. Like the way that they set that up with him backing up, it's like, oh, he has just enough space to really get a good running start to this thing. And then it's just like clomp, clomp, jump. I'm like, oh, wasn't there a little more room for you? But yeah, I guess what they're trying to do is like give us a sense of, it's a leap of faith for this person who didn't know what he can really do. But to that end, it's a leap of faith for Peggy and Colonel Phillips also, like for all of these people who, she believes in him and Phillips doesn't. And so in the process of this story, we've talked about this, like the journey of a protagonist who isn't really growing or changing, but is changing those around him. Like that's largely Steve in this film. And now he's really like Colonel Phillips is one of the characters that he's really changing. I suppose in situations like this, we know Steve can do it. It's not a surprise that he's going to survive this whole thing. The whole point of this is that when we do cut to Colonel Phillips, that he has kind of written him off, that he's kind of given up on the guy. And I guess that's kind of the design of the way that it plays, because the fact that it does dissolve, we don't get to see the resolution. We don't get to see him joining the Howling Commandos and the rest of the POWs. So it's designed in a way where we're supposed to now be kind of in Colonel Phillips' mindset of, he's missing in action sort of thing. I don't know. I guess that's the only way I can read the decision on the filmmaker's part to how they chose to write this. I don't know. How's that play for you guys?
Yeah, in some ways, I think we had the very obvious thing they were working towards of Captain America and Red Skull on the catwalk. Like that's where a lot of the action was built to get us to this point. And I don't know that they fully worked out the what next after that. And that point where, it works really well. I like the catwalk sequence. I like, the punches and the face reveal. That all does work, but it feels like maybe another pass at the finale of this action sequence was what was needed.
I will say a thing that I definitely do like about this minute is that we get a nice typewriter in here, right? Like that old school typewriter.
Yeah, the Royal
coming in. It's like, it's got like a little bit of wear and tear. It's got a dent in the front. You're like, yeah, typewriter. That feels good. After all the crazy technology, back to a typewriter.
Right. There's something about that typewriter on this desk, but with the tree and the pine needles on the ground all around. I actually really like that. Like just something about that aesthetic, like in contrast to the fantastical war that was just fought in the, in the burning building over here with the Hydra tech and the, the blue and everything. Right. We get to more of this like rugged, down to earth, G.I. Joe.
Yeah. Still there's like industrial presence, but it's like, yeah, but this is like a pretty rugged industrial setting.
Yeah, and I think that that's an interesting point about the camp and the tech and stuff that it feels like we've like in a weird way we're returning to nature and we are returning to war, but it is kind of a simpler time, a simpler type of war where we just have a royal typewriter and the corporal just clacking away on it. Nothing feels as complicated as it had been. And yeah, we are in a place in this camp where we're seeing the pine trees and it feels very natural and everything is so drastically contrasted from the fireballs of hell that we just came from with the factory and the crazy Tesseract energy and all that. So there is an interesting switch that we've just gone through here. So that's a good point, that the fact that we're very specifically, I suppose, from Joe Johnston's perspective, wanting to kind of retract from the crazy comic book antics and go back to something, a setting that feels a little more at home in our expectations of World War II, which is this space.
Yeah, this feels, like watching Band of Brothers or Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah, right.
To some degree, right? You've got, tables and chairs and stuff, and all of that.
Yeah, and you have the colonel dictating yet another condolence letter. He's talked about how many of these he has done, and this is for Stephen G. Rogers. Do either of you know Stephen's middle name?
I don't. Off the top of my head, I'm ready for a little bit of trivia to get locked into my mind vaults forever.
I didn't know this. It is Grant. Stephen Grant Rogers.
I would guess, Civil War general reference, right?
It has that vibe, right? It definitely does. So, and also he calls him captain. And so I guess officially he is a captain. We were talking about this, like, did they actually make him a captain? He says, when he's jumping out of the plane, he's like, hey, I can say what I want or whatever. I'm a captain. But we were like, is he joking about, like, is that him being cheeky that they call him Captain America? But no, Colonel Phillips doesn't seem like the sort of person who in a condolence letter would be, saying Captain Stephen G. Rogers in a joking way. So I guess he is officially a captain.
Yeah, I guess with this. Yeah. And yeah, it's one of those, like, Captain America rolls off the tongue really well, but in terms of military rank, what does that actually mean for him? Is it literal? Yeah. So it must be.
Well, I feel like they gave him captain because he was Captain America, and I feel like it's one of those things that feels like, when a university gives an honorary degree to somebody, it feels like an honorary title rank that they probably gave to him. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to do some research real quick to see, like, is there a mechanism for, like honoring a performer, with an actual rank or what? Because, like, I know he was enlisted, but, like, he was just enlisted and he went to basic training.
And he was treated more like a USO performer than
exactly
than anything.
A performing monkey.
For this minute, it does stand out how amazing Tommy Lee Jones's voice is. Like, just when we cut back to the typewriter and we get the clacking and we hear his voice providing some of this narration. What an iconic voice for Hollywood. Just really top-notch timbre of voice there.
Do you both like Tommy Lee Jones as Colonel Phillips in this role?
Yeah, I do. And I think for where Marvel was in terms of being a production studio, having him in this role elevated the sense of what a Marvel movie could be. Like it just lent instant credibility because of his own star power and like his place within Hollywood, that he was doing a Marvel film. I think it really did elevate it, because this is before, like, Marvel was the behemoth that just swallowed up everyone's box office dollars.
yeah, right. And also it fits, like, with Tommy Lee Jones, where it is a role that is likely never going to be brought up again. It's something where he could commit to doing one film and then not have to worry about them saying, "Oh, and can you come back for this post-credit sequence? Oh, and can you come back for this?" It's like, it's kind of a one and done. And I feel like that probably fit pretty well with what Tommy Lee Jones would want to sign on to.
Yeah, I don't think he signed the 3-film contract or anything like that.
All right. Well, we're going to have more Tommy Lee Jones in tomorrow's Minute as we kind of go through the rest of this condolence letter and have a little confrontation with Agent Carter.
I'm going to make one guess as to getting him the rank of captain based on his stuff.
Okay.
It could be based on pay grade.
Oh, is that a thing?
So with a very, very basic, like, you heard it happen here while I was doing it, search. Some of the ranks do have automatic pay grade adjustments. And so if he was enlisted and then kind of got pulled into the specialty program and the USO stuff, but they wanted to pay him a certain amount for what he was doing, they might have to increase his rank to compensate for that. But that is just a guess.
That's interesting, though. I wouldn't think a USO actor would be getting paid that much, but maybe because he's super.
Well, and I mean, maybe it's because he was part of a medical experiment.
Sure,
There's
sure,
a certain amount
absolutely.
of monetary compensation, and that is going to equate to a ranking since he was enlisted. If he was a civilian, to be different, but like, okay, well, we can't have you be just a grunt and make this kind of money during our experimentation.
Wouldn't it have been funny, though, if when he became the superhero that he started out as Private America and then had to work his way up?
First Lieutenant America and
Master Sergeant America. Like,
okay, well, you're not in these shows anymore, so you're going to automatically get demoted back to the enlisted level that you should be at. You have to work your way up just like everyone else.
Exactly. Oh, that'd be funny. That would be funny. All right, the two of you, thank you again, as always, for joining me here on the show. I really appreciate it.
I love doing these Marvel Movies by Minute. It is a blast. Mm-hmm. So thank you so much for asking us back on.
Yes,
absolutely. Well, remind everybody where they can tune into your own shows.
I host the Protagonist Podcast, and the premise is that each week we're going to have a guest on and talk about a great character in a great story, and we keep it very eclectic. So it is not as narrowly focused as your podcast here on one film for every episode for a season. And that is hosted over at duelinggenre.com.
And also through Dueling Genre, I host Disney Animation Minute Essentials, which is a Movies by Minutes podcast focused on Disney animated films.
Fantastic. Well, check those shows out. They're great. And you'll find links to them in the show notes. That's it for today. We'll be back to close out the week with Minute 70. So until next time, true believers.
Marvel Movie Minute is a production of True Story FM. Engineering by Andy Nelson. This season's music is Spread the News by Anthony Vega, and this season's show art is by Winston Yabo. Find the show at truestory.fm, and if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, consider doing that for this show.